The massive crystal chamber floated in the clouds of Kelver Prime, spinning slowly above the gas giant's endless storms. Inside, representatives from 12 different alien species sat in a perfect circle around a glowing holographic display. The air hummed with tension as they reviewed the latest reports from the galaxy's outer rim territories. Ambassador Vextar stretched his long reptilian neck and flicked his forked tongue in disgust. His golden scales caught the chamber's blue light as he leaned forward to examine the data more closely. "These humans," he hissed, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered a dozen star systems. "They dare to send us demands? Look at their pathetic ships, barely faster than light, armed with primitive chemical rockets." The holographic display showed recent human expansion into previously unclaimed sectors. New colonies dotted the star maps, each one marked with the simple flag of Earth, a blue and green sphere surrounded by silver stars. It was laughably simple compared to the complex heraldry of the established galactic powers. High Arbiter Talves raised one crystalline hand for silence. His body was made of living diamond, each facet reflecting the chamber's light in rainbow patterns. "Let us review their communication once more," he said, his voice ringing like struck crystal. The recording played again, filling the chamber with a human voice speaking in their crude, guttural language. A translation matrix converted the words into the pure mathematical concepts that served as the galactic standard. "We seek peaceful coexistence with all galactic civilizations. However, any interference with human colonies, shipping lanes, or civilian populations will be met with appropriate defensive measures." Laughter erupted around the circle. The insectoid hive speaker Clicksmoth clicked its mandibles rapidly, a sound like breaking glass that indicated extreme amusement among its species. "Defensive measures?" it chittered through its translation device. "These creatures have existed in space for less than 50 rotations. What could they possibly do against fleets that have ruled the galaxy for millennia?" General Mordak of the Iron Confederacy slammed one massive fist against his chair's armrest. The sound echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. His species had evolved from predatory pack hunters, and their military might was legendary across known space. "I have seen their weapons," he growled, his voice like grinding stone. "Kinetic projectiles. Chemical explosives. They fight like primitives throwing rocks at starships." The Ethereal Collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering force field, pulsed with colors that translated as contempt. "Their greatest achievement is faster-than-light travel, and even that technology is centuries behind our own. They use crude jump drives that require massive energy expenditure for each transition." Ambassador Yilthara of the Oceanic Alliance spoke next, her aquatic form floating in a specialized environment suit filled with methane ammonia solution. Her species had mastered biotechnology to levels that bordered on magic, growing their ships and weapons from specially designed organisms. "We have analyzed their biological makeup," she burbled through her translator. "Carbon-based, water-dependent, extremely fragile. A single plasma burst would sterilize their homeworld." Talves activated another display, showing detailed intelligence reports on human military capabilities. The numbers were pitiful compared to any single member of the Galactic Council. Earth's combined naval forces consist of approximately 200 vessels. The smallest member of our alliance maintains over 3,000 ships of the line. The Void Walker's representative materialized briefly, its shadow form speaking in whispers that bypassed the translation matrix entirely. "They are insects," it said directly into each mind present. "Insects that have learned to hop between flowers. Nothing more." Senator Colvis of the Trading Consortium leaned back in his chair, multiple arms gesturing dismissively. His species had built their power through economic manipulation rather than direct conquest, but their influence was no less absolute. "Perhaps we should simply ignore them," he suggested, his translator giving his words a bored tone. "Let them play at being a galactic power until they encounter something that demonstrates their true insignificance." "No," Vextar interjected sharply. "They have established colonies in sectors that belong to us by right of prior claim. Their expansion must be checked before other primitive species begin to think they too can challenge established authority." General Mordak nodded approvingly. "A demonstration is required. Something visible across the galaxy. Other developing species are watching to see how we respond to this presumption." High Arbiter Talves stood, his crystalline form casting fractured rainbows across the chamber walls. "Very well. We shall vote on the appropriate response to humanity's expansion. Option 1. Grant them protected developing species status and establish formal diplomatic relations. Option 2. Implement corrective measures to demonstrate the consequences of challenging galactic order. The vote was swift and unanimous. 12 species, representing the combined might of thousands of star systems and trillions of beings, chose correction over diplomacy. Admiral Colthex of the Hegemony War Fleet received his orders within the hour. The message was simple and direct. Select an appropriate human colony for demonstration purposes. Make the lesson memorable. Ensure other primitive species understand the cost of presumption. Colthex studied the tactical reports on human settlements. Most were small research outposts or mining facilities with minimal populations. But one caught his attention: New Eden, a thriving agricultural colony with 50,000 inhabitants. Perfect for sending a message that would resonate throughout human space. As the Hegemony fleet departed for the human frontier, none of the council members gave the mission another thought. It was a minor police action against an insignificant species. They had more important matters to discuss, like the trade disputes between the Crystalline Collective and the Iron Confederacy, or the territorial negotiations in the Andromeda Spiral. They had no way of knowing that their corrective measures would awaken something in humanity that would hunt them across the galaxy without mercy or forgiveness. New Eden stretched across the fertile valley like a jewel dropped from the heavens. The colony's white domed buildings caught the morning light of Kepler 442b's orange sun, their surfaces gleaming against the backdrop of purple mountains that ringed the settlement. Children played in the central park under the protective atmospheric dome, their laughter echoing off the transparent walls that kept the alien atmosphere at bay. Governor James Mitchell stood at his office window on the 40th floor of the administrative tower, watching the daily bustle of his people below. Farmers headed out to the hydroponic fields in their environmental suits. Teachers walked toward the education center with data pads full of lesson plans. Dr. Emma Watson hurried past carrying medical supplies to the clinic where she treated everything from construction accidents to alien allergies. The colony had grown from 300 pioneers to 50,000 souls in just 15 years. They had built something beautiful here, something worth protecting. The people below him had no idea that 12 massive warships hung in orbit above their world, each one capable of reducing their entire settlement to ash. The communication panel on his desk chimed with an incoming transmission from orbit. Mitchell touched the control with a steady hand, though his heart hammered against his ribs. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the bridge of an alien vessel. A creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a spider sat in the command chair, its multiple eyes fixed on the camera with predatory intensity. Primitive human settlement? The alien spoke through a translation device that gave its words a mechanical quality. I am Admiral Colthex of the Hegemony War Fleet. You have 6 standard hours to evacuate your colony completely. All structures, technology, and resources must remain intact. Any delay or resistance will result in immediate orbital cleansing. Mitchell cleared his throat and leaned forward. This is Governor James Mitchell of New Eden Colony. We have 50,000 civilians here, including 15,000 children and elderly residents. We need at least 48 hours to organize proper evacuation procedures. Our transport capacity is limited and we need time to. The transmission cut off abruptly. The holographic display went dark. Mitchell stared at the empty space where the alien's image had been. He had dealt with difficult negotiations before with corporate representatives and government bureaucrats, but this was different. There had been no emotion in those alien eyes, no hint of mercy or understanding. Just cold calculation and absolute authority. The emergency sirens began wailing 3 minutes later. The sound cut through the colony like a blade, sending people running for the evacuation shelters. Mitchell opened colony-wide communications and began speaking as calmly as he could manage. All residents, this is Governor Mitchell. We have received an evacuation order from alien forces currently in orbit. This is not a drill. Proceed immediately to designated evacuation points. Families with children have priority on the first transports. Mary Thompson grabbed her 6-year-old daughter Emma and ran toward the spaceport, her husband Robert carrying their baby son. Around them, thousands of other families streamed through the streets in organized chaos. The colony's emergency protocols had been drilled countless times, but no one had imagined they would need them like this. Tommy Wells helped his elderly grandmother toward the transport staging area, her walking stick clicking against the pavement. The boy was only 12, but he stayed calm for her sake even as fear clawed at his chest. His parents were somewhere behind them in the crowd, helping other families reach the ships. The first evacuation transport lifted off exactly 4 hours after the alien ultimatum. Governor Mitchell watched from the control tower as the civilian freighter Hope's Dawn climbed toward the upper atmosphere with 300 souls aboard. Then the sky lit up with plasma fire. The beam struck the transport amidships, vaporizing the vessel in a flash of superheated gas. Metal fragments rained down on the colony like burning snow. Mitchell stood frozen as debris pelted the control tower's windows, each impact leaving spider web cracks in the reinforced glass. "My God," whispered Dr. Watson from beside him. "They're killing evacuees." The second wave of bombardment began 30 seconds later. Plasma beams lanced down from orbit like the fingers of an angry god, each one precisely targeted. The administrative tower exploded in a pillar of flame. The education center collapsed as its support structure melted. The medical facility where Dr. Watson had saved hundreds of lives became a crater of molten concrete. Mary Thompson threw herself over Emma as their transport pad erupted in white fire. The shockwave hurled them into a drainage canal filled with superheated steam. Robert's agonized scream cut through the roar of destruction as plasma washed over him like liquid starlight. Tommy Wells watched from a hillside as the residential district where he had lived his entire life became a sea of glass. His house, his school, his friends' homes, all of it transformed into a perfectly smooth plain of fused sand that reflected the alien ships overhead like a dark mirror. The bombardment continued for 2 hours. The aliens used thermal scanners to hunt survivors through the forests beyond the colony, their smaller ships weaving between the trees like metallic predators. Each heat signature meant another human life snuffed out with clinical precision. When the killing finally stopped, only 300 people remained alive out of 50,000. They huddled in the damaged cargo freighter Last Stand, its engines barely functional and its hull scarred by near misses. Captain Lisa Morgan, bleeding from a head wound, managed to activate the ship's recording systems as they limped away from the burning world. The footage showed everything: the methodical destruction, the hunting of civilians, the complete annihilation of an entire community. The aliens broadcast this recording across human space with a simple message attached: submit to Galactic Authority, or share this fate. They expected immediate surrender from a species too weak to fight back. Instead, they had just signed their own death warrant. They simply did not know it yet. The footage from New Eden reached Earth at exactly 14:32 Greenwich Standard Time on a Tuesday afternoon. Within minutes, every communication network across human space carried the same horrific images. Children burning. Families torn apart by plasma fire. The methodical hunting of civilians through forests that had once been their playground. President Williams sat in the White House Situation Room, his face pale as marble as he watched the recording for the third time. Around the table, his advisors spoke in hushed tones about diplomatic protests and economic sanctions. Their words seemed to come from very far away, like voices heard underwater. "Sir," said Secretary of Defense Patricia Hayes, "we need to consider our response carefully. Perhaps we can work through the Galactic Trade Council too." Williams raised his hand for silence. On the screen, little Emma Thompson clutched her burned doll while her mother's screams echoed in the background. The president closed his eyes and made a decision that would reshape the galaxy. "Activate the cleansing directive," he said quietly. The room fell silent. Several advisors looked confused. Secretary Hayes went very still in her chair. "Sir," she whispered, "are you certain? The cleansing directive hasn't been implemented since we wrote it," Williams finished. "The day we first reached the stars. The day we decided what would happen if anyone ever did this to us." He looked around the table at faces he had known for years, colleagues who had become friends. "I'm sorry. But this decision was made long before today." Across human space, similar conversations were taking place. Admiral Robert Hayes received his sealed orders aboard the flagship U.S. Retribution while patrolling the Outer Rim. His hands shook as he read documents that carried authorization codes older than his military career. The cleansing directive was real and it was comprehensive. On Luna Station, Dr. Peter Davis stopped his quantum mechanics research and walked to a restricted laboratory he had never entered. His security codes, dormant for 20 years, suddenly activated systems he had helped design as a young graduate student. The room contained blueprints for weapons that violated every interstellar treaty humanity had ever signed. Captain Lisa Morgan, the wounded pilot who had escaped from New Eden, found herself promoted to admiral overnight. Her new assignment came with a single-line mission briefing: remember New Eden. Show them what humans do to child killers. The change began immediately. On Mars, the massive industrial complexes shifted production from civilian goods to military hardware. Asteroid mining operations stopped harvesting metals for construction and started manufacturing projectiles designed to kill at near-light speed. Research stations throughout the solar system began building devices that existed only in theoretical physics papers. Dr. Emily Carter had been studying exotic matter interactions at the Europa Science Facility when the orders came through. Within hours, she was leading a team to weaponize her research. The quantum tunneling effects she had used to study particle behavior could also punch holes through alien armor at the molecular level. "Are we really doing this?" asked her assistant, Mark Thompson, as they calibrated their first prototype weapon. His sister had lived on New Eden before the massacre. "Yes," Emily said simply. "We are." The aliens monitoring human communications expected panic, diplomatic protests, maybe even surrender negotiations. Instead, they intercepted something far more disturbing. Human military frequencies carried brief, encrypted messages that their translation computers could barely decipher. The words were simple, repeated across every human world: "New Eden remembers. New Eden does not forgive." Captain Neil Parker commanded the stealth destroyer UES Silent Revenge, retrofitted with experimental cloaking technology in just 6 weeks. His ship was invisible to every scanning method the aliens possessed, a ghost that could strike without warning. He tested the systems during a patrol near Proxima Centauri and watched alien sensor sweeps pass right through his position without detection. "Perfect," he murmured to his tactical officer. "They'll never see us coming." Shipyards across human space worked around the clock to convert civilian vessels into instruments of war. The luxury liner Star Princess became the missile cruiser New Eden's Wrath. Cargo freighters turned into kinetic bombardment platforms loaded with tungsten rods the size of telephone poles. Even small courier ships received plasma cannons that could crack a battleship's hull. Commander Susan Reynolds supervised the conversion of her exploration vessel into a planet killer. The UES Discovery had once mapped distant star systems and studied alien life forms. Now it carried weapons capable of sterilizing entire worlds. Her crew worked with frightening efficiency, their faces hard and emotionless. "Ma'am," asked her engineering officer, "what if we encounter civilian populations during our mission?" Reynolds looked at the tactical display showing her ship's new weapons. "New Eden had civilian populations too," she said. "They were children playing in parks. The aliens killed them anyway." The transformation took exactly 90 days. In 3 months, humanity converted their entire civilization from peaceful exploration to systematic extermination. Farmers learned to operate weapon manufacturing equipment. Teachers studied alien weak points and tactical vulnerabilities. Children as young as 10 began training on simulators that taught them how to target alien ships. The galaxy noticed the sudden silence from human space. No more diplomatic messages. No trade requests. No cultural exchanges. Just dead quiet from every human world, as if the species had simply stopped communicating with the outside universe. High Arbiter Talvesh tried to contact Earth directly, expecting to receive humanity's surrender. Instead, his transmission was answered by automated systems that played the New Eden massacre footage on an endless loop, followed by a simple message: "Your debt has been calculated. Payment begins now." The Galactic Council assumed this was empty bluster from a defeated species. They had no idea that humanity was no longer the same civilization they had decided to correct. Something cold and patient had awakened in the human soul, something that would hunt across the stars until every alien involved in New Eden's destruction was dead. The age of human mercy was over. The age of human vengeance had begun. The Vorthen mining station had existed for 300 years in the asteroid belt of the Kepler-76 system. It was a massive structure, home to 12,000 alien workers who carved precious metals from floating rocks the size of mountains. The station's thick armor plating had weathered countless asteroid impacts and solar storms. Its defensive shields could stop a direct hit from a battleship's main guns. One morning it simply was not there anymore. Admiral Colthex received the report while reviewing patrol schedules aboard his flagship. The communications officer, a nervous young Saurian with bright green scales, approached his command chair with obvious reluctance. "Sir," the officer hissed quietly, "we have lost contact with Vorthen Station." Colthex did not look up from his tactical displays. Mining stations often had communication problems when solar storms interfered with their transmitters. "Send a repair ship," he ordered. "Have them restore the communication array." "Sir, you do not understand. The station is gone. Completely gone. Our long-range sensors show only empty space where it should be." Now Colthex looked up. His multiple eyes focused on the communications officer with predatory intensity. "Impossible. Vorthen Station is a Class 7 installation. Nothing short of a supernova could destroy it completely. Yes, sir. That is why I thought you should see the sensor data yourself. Kolthek studied the readings on his personal display. Where Vorthen Station had been, space now contained only an asteroid field. But the asteroids were wrong somehow. They were too uniform, too precisely shattered, as if something had broken them apart with mathematical precision. Send Squadron 7 to investigate, he ordered. Full battle configuration. Something destroyed that station and I want to know what. Captain Vexmar commanded the patrol squadron that jumped into the Kepler-76 system 6 hours later. His 3 heavy cruisers dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons powered and shields raised. What they found defied explanation. The asteroid field stretched for millions of kilometers, each chunk of rock identical in size and shape. No explosion could create such uniform debris. It was as if some impossible force had taken Vorthen Station and everything around it and ground them down to perfectly measured pieces. Begin deep scans, Vexmar ordered. I want to know what did this. His sensor officer worked frantically over the detection arrays. Sir, I am reading unusual energy signatures throughout the field. The asteroids contain trace amounts of metals that match Vorthen Station's hull composition, but there are also biological traces. Saurian, crystalline, even some ethereal energy residue. You mean the station's crew? Yes, sir. Mixed in with the rock debris. As if everyone aboard was processed, along with the station itself. Vexmar felt ice form in his veins. His species had evolved from apex predators, and every instinct screamed that they were in terrible danger. Set course for the system edge. We are leaving immediately. But they were already too late. Captain Neil Parker watched from his stealth destroyer as the alien patrol ships moved deeper into the artificial asteroid field. The UES Silent Revenge remained completely invisible, her hull coated with metamaterials that absorbed every wavelength of electromagnetic radiation. Even gravity sensors could not detect her presence. Target acquired, reported his weapons officer, Lieutenant Sarah Wells. 3 heavy cruisers, Saurian configuration. They matched the ship types that participated in the New Eden bombardment. Confirmed, Parker replied. His voice was calm, almost conversational. New Eden protocols are in effect. No survivors, no exceptions, no mercy. The kinetic bombardment began without warning. Tungsten rods launched from hidden positions throughout the asteroid field, each one accelerated to 90% of light speed by magnetic launchers built into the larger debris chunks. The aliens had no time to raise shields or take evasive action. The first rod struck Vexmar's flagship amidships. At near light velocity, the tungsten projectile did not simply penetrate the hull. It converted the entire vessel into superheated plasma. The ship expanded outward in a perfect sphere of glowing gas, beautiful and terrible in the vacuum of space. The second cruiser managed to fire a single distress beacon before 3 rods struck it simultaneously. The beacon's transmission lasted exactly 2 seconds before the ship joined its companion as an expanding cloud of ionized particles. The third cruiser tried to escape, its engines burning at maximum power toward the system edge. Parker watched its desperate flight with professional interest. The ship had a good crew, fast reflexes, strong survival instincts. Under other circumstances he might have admired their skill. Fire, he said quietly. The final kinetic strike came from directly ahead of the fleeing cruiser, launched from a weapons platform hidden in what appeared to be an ordinary asteroid. The tungsten rod met the alien ship head-on at combined velocities approaching light speed. The resulting explosion lit up the entire system like a second sun. Parker logged the engagement in his ship's computer. 3 enemy vessels destroyed. 0 survivors. Another small debt paid against the massacre of New Eden. He wondered how many more ships he would need to kill before the screaming children in his dreams finally found peace. Across the galaxy, similar attacks erupted without warning. Admiral Susan Reynolds commanded the assault on a crystalline supply convoy near the Vega system. 12 transport ships, each carrying resources to support the war effort against humanity, simply vanished in coordinated kinetic strikes. No distress calls, no survivors, no trace that they had ever existed. The aliens finally understood that humanity was no longer playing by the rules of civilized warfare. These were not battles for territory or resources. This was extermination, cold and methodical and absolutely without mercy. The humans had become something the galaxy had never seen before, an entire species dedicated to systematic revenge. The hunt had begun and the aliens were learning what it felt like to be prey. 2 years had passed since New Eden burned, and the galaxy had learned to fear the silence that followed human ships. The once mighty Galactic Council now met in a hidden bunker deep beneath the surface of a dead moon, their crystal chamber abandoned after human hunter-killer fleets had turned 3 council worlds into radioactive wastelands. High Arbiter Talves stared at the tactical display with growing horror. Red markers showed the locations of destroyed alien worlds, each one a civilization that had taken millions of years to develop and mere hours for humanity to erase. The Saurian Republic's homeworld was gone, its continents cracked and bleeding molten rock into space. The Crystalline Collective had retreated so far into the galactic core that their signals took months to reach the outer territories. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked the assembled representatives. General Mordak, his once proud Iron Confederacy reduced to scattered refugee fleets, checked his data pad with shaking hands. "Perhaps 3,000 vessels across all member species. The humans have destroyed over 20,000 ships in the past year alone." "But how?" demanded Ambassador Yilthara, her aquatic form trembling in its environmental suit. "They were primitives. Chemical rockets and kinetic weapons. How did they become so deadly?" The answer came from intercepted human communications that their best codebreakers had finally translated. Captain Thomas Mitchell, son of New Eden's former governor, stood on the bridge of the U.S. New Eden's Fury as his fleet approached the last hegemony stronghold. The ship's communication array broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring every alien in the system could hear his words. "This is Commander Mitchell of the Human Extermination Fleet. We know you are monitoring this transmission. We want you to understand something before you die. We were never the same species that asked for peace 2 years ago. That species died with the children of New Eden. What emerged from their ashes is something you created, something that exists only to ensure you stop existing." The tactical display showed 47 human ships surrounding the hegemony base. They were not sleek vessels of exploration anymore, but angular instruments of destruction covered in weapon mounts and kinetic launchers. Each ship bore the same marking on its hull, a burned planet surrounded by the words, "New Eden remembers." The base commander, Admiral Colthex himself, opened a desperate communication channel. His voice, once filled with predatory confidence, now carried the tremor of absolute terror. "We surrender. We invoke the Galactic Warfare Convention. Civilian populations must be protected." Thomas Mitchell's response was broadcast across every frequency the aliens monitored. New Eden had civilian populations. 15,000 children played in our parks before you turned them into glass. You showed them no mercy. We will show you the same consideration. The orbital bombardment began immediately. Human kinetic weapons, refined over 2 years of constant warfare, struck the base with surgical precision. But this was not a quick military strike. This was systematic extermination carried out with the patience of a species that had learned to hate with mathematical precision. Dr. Emily Carter, now commanding the science vessel U.S. Retribution, watched as her quantum disruptor weapons tore apart the base's molecular structure at the atomic level. The aliens did not simply die, they ceased to exist on a fundamental level, their very atoms scattered across space like cosmic dust. It was a weapon that violated every law of civilized warfare, and she had spent 2 years perfecting it. "Ma'am," asked her weapons officer, Lieutenant Mark Thompson, "the evacuation ships are launching. Mostly civilians and non-combatants." Emily looked at the fleeing vessels through her view screen. Thousands of alien families running for their lives, just as the people of New Eden had tried to run. Children pressed against windows watching their homeworld burn behind them. For a moment, something that might have been compassion stirred in her chest. Then she remembered the footage of little Emma Thompson clutching her melted doll while her mother screamed in the background. "New Eden protocols remain in effect," she said quietly. "No survivors, no exceptions, no mercy. Target the evacuation ships." The quantum disruptor beams lanced out across space, each one precisely targeted. The alien evacuation ships did not explode. They simply stopped existing, their molecules scattered to the solar wind. Thousands of voices crying for mercy fell silent in seconds. Admiral Robert Hayes commanded the largest human fleet, positioned at the edge of Galactic Council space like a sword hanging over their collective throats. His ships carried planet-killer weapons designed by humanity's brightest minds, all of them working with single-minded dedication toward the same goal: total extinction of every species that had voted to make an example of New Eden. The final communication came from High Arbiter Talves himself, broadcast from the Council's hidden bunker. His crystalline form had lost its rainbow luster, appearing gray and lifeless in the dim emergency lighting. "Please," he said, the word translated into human language with perfect clarity. We were wrong. We see that now. We can coexist. We can make reparations. We can. The transmission cut off as human ships found and destroyed the bunker. Talves and the remaining council members died as New Eden's children had died, without warning, without mercy, without hope. Thomas Mitchell stood in the observation deck of his flagship, watching the last hegemony world burn beneath them. The planet's atmosphere glowed with the light of continent-spanning fires, its oceans boiling away into space. Soon it would be nothing but another dead rock orbiting a distant star. He thought of his father, who had tried so desperately to negotiate for more time to evacuate civilians. He thought of the children who had played in New Eden's parks. He thought of the species that had laughed at humanity's threats and voted unanimously for correction. Now they knew what correction looked like when applied by a species that had learned to hate with the cold precision of mathematics. The galaxy would remember New Eden forever, because humanity would make sure no one was left alive to forget it. The reckoning was complete. The debt was paid in full.